fractions, everyone's worst nightmare. In this video, I'm going to be discussing the progressions of fractions and what the elementary school levels go through understanding fractions. So in the beginning of first grade, students begin to understand the vocabulary words of fractions. So as a whole is one full, and then they begin to understand quarters of fourths, which is four smaller pieces of the one full, and also halves, which is two parts of one whole, so it's split into two pieces. And this is when they understand that they see visual representations of it. So if one whole square can be cut into four pieces, and that's fourths of the whole, and then one big circle into two parts is one half. The word that they use in first grade is they begin to understand partition. Partition means when they split into two parts, so as a half or fourths or thirds and so forth. So in first grade, they understand the vocabulary words, where they transition that to second grade. And second grade is where students begin to understand more of fractions and the meaning of it. So in second grade, they can see that although a shape may look different, it can mean the same. So if we do an example of fourths, we can see that although one set is in the shape of square form and the other one is in triangle form, we can see that it could be the same if we cut it in the triangle into a smaller piece, which means they're both into fourths. So although they look different in different shapes, they're equal the same as being fourths. Just one is a square and one is a triangle. But students begin to learn and see and understand that they mean the same and they're equivalent to each other. Taking this information, they take it to third grade. And third grade is where students fully begin to see fractions using the simple form as a fraction and the meaning of it. So an example can be like they see like 2/3 or 1/3 using numbers and the symbol of a fraction. So 1/3 is equivalent to 1/3. So we could see that as an example of using a circle and to cut into three pieces using a visual representation. Another way that third graders begin to learn the meaning of fractions is using the linked model. The linked model is just showing the students that although that shapes of fractions can be represented in different shapes and forms, so as we showed you in the example of a circle, it could be cut into three pieces as well as in a rectangle into three pieces, so each piece would signify 1/3 of it. Another example of using it in a visual representation that not a lot of schools teach it this way is by set model. So we can see that there's three circles, but only two are covered in squares, and 1/3 of it is not. The other model is called the area model, and this is the one that we're more familiar with. This we can be represented of shades, so we can see that 1/3 of the triangle is shaded and the other 2/3 is not. Third graders also begin to get introduced with number line and fractions. They start setting the number lines from 0 to 1 and begin filling in fractions from within the two numbers. So we can set that 1/2 is in the center of 0 and 1, and we can start placing the other fractions using number line of which one's closer to 0 and which one is closer to 1. Students also begin to get introduced with more counting with fractions using using number lines as well. A misconception that students have is that fractions are only in decimal form from 0 to 1, but that is not the case. Fractions can be over than 1. So if we begin to teach students that it can be possible from counting from 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5, 6/5, 7/5, they will be more understandable with fractions, and that fractions does not end on the number line of 1. Students also begin to see equivalent fractions using a number line as well. They begin to see that although two fractions are different, they may be equal to the same. So from using a number line, we can see that half is the same as 2/4. 2/4 is also the same as 3/6 based on the number line using the same denominator. So they begin to see, hey, these numbers are the same. Although they look different numbers, they are equal to the same as 1/2. Okay, we think that we're done with third grade and fractions, but no, we're not. Third graders also begin to compare fractions using greater and less than. So although one fraction may look like it may be more, it may be actually less. So as like 1/4 can actually be greater than 1/2, depending on the size of the shape. Or it can also be equivalent depending on it. So if that is actually 1/4, then it can actually be 1/2 depending on the shape. So students begin to understand how fractions and the comparisons of equivalence also work. They also begin to use the terms common denominator and common numerator and the difference. So they can see that 1/4 and 2/4 have the same denominator, and 3/6 and 3/7 have the same numerator. Using that information that they learned in third grade with a lot of information that they did learn, they take it into fourth grade. Fourth grade is even a greater step into taking into fractions. They're still using the denominator and numerator, but they're also using it. They're beginning to use it in equation forms and solving equations using the numerator and the denominator. So they get introduced with adding and subtracting, on how to change the numerator when necessary and the denominator when necessary. So they begin to work with decimal fractions for tenths and hundredths. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10 is the same as 0.04, 0.05, etc. They also compare equal and unequal fractions. So as they learned in third grade, 1/2 can be the same as 2/4. 2/4 is the same as 4/8, and 4/8 is into 1/8. So they begin to get introduced with reducing using common multiples of it, because by third grade they already are comfortable using multiples. But another way that they can use it is also by using visual representation. So we can see that one whole paper cut into half is the same, will be the same if we cut it into two other smaller pieces, and continuously doing that until we can see that four out of 8 is 4/8 is the same as 1/2, as I was saying, using visual representations, because I think visual representations is a very, very important key aspect that teachers need to continue using throughout their grades, not even if they are 6th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade. It's a really, really great way for students to see, hey, this is how it works using the real world scenarios. Talking about real world scenarios, 5th grade begins to see and learn fractions using real life scenarios, using word problems, and also begin to use more of equations and solving it. So they begin to learn multiplication, how to multiply fractions, how to divide fractions, how to add fractions, how to subtract fractions. So by 5th grade, they learn how to solve it, and they're advanced, pretty proficient in fractions, I would say. Because with all the information that they learned from common denominators and how to make them common denominators and solving the multiples and stuff, they use all that information that they learned from 1st grade to 5th grade and continue to use it through 6th grade, through high school, through middle school, through all the way to college even. Although fractions may seem scary and no one likes to deal with fractions, fractions is something that um, that is in the real world, that is all around us, from folding laundry, from ordering pizza and only getting 2 sits of it while you purchase the whole thing. It's important to understand fractions because it will forever be with us. So that is my video. I hope you enjoy it, and yeah.